All right, I'd like to call this meeting of the Lakota Board of Education to order today, August 18th. Adam, please call the roll.
Mr. D.
Here.
Ms. Casper.
Here.
Ms. French.
Here.
Mr. Horton.
Here.
Ms. Schaefer.
Here. Do I have a motion for approval of the agenda?
So moved.
Second. Any discussion? Hearing none. Adam, please call the roll.
Mr. Horton.
Yes.
Ms. French.
Yes.
Mr. D.
Yes.
Ms. Casper.
Yes.
Ms. Schaefer.
Yes. Please join me in the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. I'd like to welcome everyone tonight. I can't believe we were already at the first full day with all of our students, well, except some kindergartners, almost all of our students, for all the whole alphabet today. So welcome back. Thank you to everyone who's worked so hard over the summer to prepare for this day. And last week's where we had half of our students, and we know that it's going to be a great year with great academic success. So we look forward to everything that has been established over the summer to make sure we'll have a wonderful year. And with that, I will turn it over to Dr. Whiteley.
Just to reiterate, it has been a wonderful start of the school year. It was so wonderful to see students' smiling faces and staff at convocation. In fact, I was just talking to our presenters. I think some of us are still getting back into the swing of that schedule, but excited about the school year that is to come. We are continuing to enroll students, even though school has officially started. Our current enrollment right now is 1,712 students. Last year, on this very same date, that would have been 1,801.
Okay, you're missing
Sorry,
a number.
I'm missing a number. Sorry, I'm reading and I'm missing a number. 17,120, 18,010, excuse me. However, we do have 231 applicants in the final forms queue. What I mean by that, so parents, there are still some parents just kind of that started the enrollment process kind of later. So I'm getting reminders and text about regularly reminding them what needs to be completed to complete that documentation process. So all at the end of each day, they are current with completed enrollments, meaning if all the forms are signed and all the required documentation is received, the student is enrolled that day. So we still have about 231. As you remember from our conversations last year, our enrollment doesn't really kind of level out until about mid-September or so. So I will keep making sure that we give you updates on what enrollment looks like and comparing that to last year.
Do we know like how long it will take to get those students enrolled?
It really depends on when we get the proper documentation for each family. So they've started the process, but they might be missing an affidavit, they might be missing a lease, they might be missing some immunization pieces. So that's why they get the daily reminders to work with those families to say, hey, once you complete this, we can get you enrolled. So once we have that documentation, they're enrolled the day of.
So we're waiting on things from the
families themselves.
not
They're not waiting
backlog
on us.
Okay,
Mhm.
Thank you.
Any other questions at this point? All right, Mr. Zink.
Okay, so you'll see on this agenda, we have a 5-year forecast review, which is much earlier than usual. That's because House Bill 96 changed our deadlines. So with the deadline now being October 15th for this year, and then it'll be again in February, by the end of February, we are going to have this at this meeting and the next meeting because our October meeting is after the deadline. So because of that, we'll have the first review tonight, and then we'll have a September Finance Committee before that next board meeting. So that will be upcoming.
Great. Anything else? East-West Marching Band, we get to focus on our student spotlight. I've thought of these folks as we've driven around in the heat and thinking, oh my goodness, out there practicing, they've had a big summer.
Absolutely. And I'm sure that they would be happy to share that with you.
Great.
Good evening. Our school year may have just begun, but if you've driven by our high schools this summer, you know that hundreds of students have been preparing for the new year for quite some time. Tonight's spotlight is shining on Lakota's marching Thunderhawks and Firebirds. Collectively, our marching bands have secured more than 80 grand championship titles and consistently achieved superior ratings at the Ohio Music Educator Association State Marching Band Finals. Please welcome Irene and Savannah from Lakota East and Michaela from Lakota West to share more about the programs.
Hello, my name is Irene Antiri with the East Marching Band, and there are just a few things I want to say. Everyone in the band has put in hours upon hours of time and effort into prepping for the show, learning our notes and learning our dots. And as we prep for the season in 90+ degree weather, it's thanks to our band community and the people that support us that we're able to put together such a cohesive and complex production for the show with over 200 people involved. And it can be pretty taxing to put in all that effort across the 3-week band camp period and even just throughout to the end of the season, but all that effort leads to smiles that are absolutely worth it when we get into the competitions and football games.
Hello, my name is Savannah Cragley, and I'm just going to talk about what's upcoming for our next season. This year's show is called Chaos in the Court, and it's more of a humorous show where jokers take over in a world of kings and queens with card games and chess elements. We'll be going to Orlando, Florida, and Lucas Oil Stadium in Indiana, alongside lots of other performances of this show. As drum majors, we lead the band through various obstacles, conduct for them, and work to build and further the passion, positive culture we have now. Thank you.
Hi, my name is Michaela November,
And I'm Michaela Mons.
and we're the senior drum majors for Lakota West. We're responsible for a lot of the logistics for marchers. We make sure students come prepared for rehearsals every day. We make sure students are where they need to be. And obviously we conduct the band, which brings us to our next topic.
This year we've adopted 2 different marching bands. We have our football band and our competitive band. Our football band allows the 8th graders and those in high school, freshmen through seniors, who don't have enough time to commit to our regular competition band, but are still able to participate in the marching band community. The football band consists of 288 people, and it has 1 practice every week, and then they go to football games, and they get to do all of the fun stuff like our pregame show, halftime show, and all of the stand tunes during the game.
Our competitive band, on the other hand, has 199 students and practices 3 times a week. Typically, this band is a lot more time-consuming, and we ask more of our students, physically and mentally. While it's more taxing, and it also is a lot more rewarding, we get to go on a lot more large trips, such as Orlando with Lakota East, and then we're going to Gray Nats. These trips are not only filled with us competing against other bands across states, but we also have a lot of activities that we participate in, we go to a lot of museums and theme parks like Universal.
Overall, we're really excited about how our new system helps us improve our students' experience with the band as well as growing our community together. And it exposes the 8th graders to the marching band earlier on during their school life. So thank you guys.
Wonderful, thank you. Do we have any questions or comments
Oh,
for?
wait.
Yeah, you don't get to escape quite yet.
You don't get off that easy.
Okay, I want to say that thank you so much for your outside school activities. So you guys make our games exciting, but the question I'm going to ask you is between East and West, if you compete, who is going to win? I know the answer from you.
Really asking that?
So which team is going to win?
I'd say we're about pretty evenly matched. I mean, we have our own opinions, but
Yeah, I think it depends on the season.
Okay. Thank you, Michaela. That's a good answer. Thank you so much for what you guys do. Honestly, I love it when I see the excitement on the faces of when your games are played. Thank you.
Thank you.
Mr. Horton, anything?
I'm very excited to hear about West's new system to have the 2 bands. I was curious how much engagement you've been getting from the 8th graders as part of this.
Yeah, I think half of our football band is 8th graders. It's a lot of kids. But I think we're not really going to see a lot of improvement until maybe 4 years or so, once it starts getting in the system more. Because I think 8th graders are going to start learning faster and being more mature throughout the season. So I think it's going to take a bit, but it's going to improve things a lot.
Well, very exciting, and I'm excited to see it this season. So thank you.
Thank you.
I don't have any questions. I just want you to know that I truly enjoy watching you all perform, whether it's at a competition or a football game. It really is a highlight for me. So thank you for all the time that you put in to bring that joy to everyone who's watching.
Thank you so much.
Mrs. Gasper?
Yes, thank you for coming and talking to us today on your very first full day of school. I love the idea, too, that West is implementing. I think that it gives kids a chance to see if they really enjoy marching band before, because you know it's a huge commitment once you get to that 9-12 competition team. So I think that's such a great idea. Do you feel like it will give you a heads up, or you'll get along better, like when the 8th graders, when they start to come to 8th grade, and let's say they end up staying in marching band? Do you think that that will help you with your shows, getting your shows down quicker, just because they have that experience now?
Yeah, our directors always tell us that the whole point of bringing in the 8th graders was so that in a couple years' time, our band can work faster and become, like, this year our competitive season has about 200 kids in it. We're hoping to grow that more so we're all experienced kids, so we can all create like as good of a show that we can create now.
Yeah, that's a great idea. For like the two East young ladies, when you do band camp, at the end of the first week, do you thoroughly feel like you love it, or are you like, oh my gosh, it's so hot, I can't do another 2 weeks? You can be honest.
I would say that after some time, it really depends day to day. There are some really hot, I'll say really long days, but I feel like definitely in the end, once you start to see that things are actually moving along and you start to see the progress, it's definitely worth it. And I would say I really love it.
Yeah, once you see the progress, you could kind of, well, thank you all for being here. And like everyone said, we're very excited to watch you. We love watching you at the football game, so thank you.
Thank you. Thank you.
So we did have a change to West with we moved some electric poles, some light poles, so that you guys could practice out on the parking lot. Has that resulted in more people showing up? I'm sure it's been a lot hotter than the old football field, but how's that been going?
The old football field was really bumpy, and it was the worst field ever. A lot of the professional marching bands said that they don't know how we practice on that. So I think when we went to the parking lot field, even though it got extremely hot out, I think it did make us like better in a way. But yeah, I prefer it.
To Mr. Carr, our parking lot field is more accurate than the actual field, so
We spent like 3 weeks measuring it out and painting it, so.
Thanks for coming.
Thank you.
So we all know that band is about the show, right? Marching band, right? But there is music involved, right? So what's your favorite piece of music that you play in the show?
Personally, my favorite is our ballad piece. It's The Great Gig in the Sky by Pink Floyd. I think a lot of our marchers really like that piece just because everybody knows it.
Sorry.
I was just going to say it also has a really cool trombone trio, so.
Nice.
For us, I don't want to sound too nerdy, but our whole entire show is like Mozart's Requiem, so it's kind of detailed. And then our ballads from a movie or whatever, but I think my favorite's the Desiree, which is our opener.
My favorite's definitely our closer. It's Mozart's Requiem, right? Or
Yeah,
what's the
I
part
don't
of it?
know what it's called.
I don't know the ending of it, but it's a really famous song that I hear all the time, and it's definitely really fun to hear the marching band play it right in front of our faces. So.
It's very loud.
Yeah.
So I can attest, I was at least a portion of band camp each day seeing both of these bands. It was definitely hot. Once I was out there for 45 minutes and they had been out there, I think at that point, 8 hours. And I literally had to change clothes because I was so sweaty. But I know, Ms. French mentioned the joy. Every student that I talked to was happy to be there, recognizing that it was hot and they'd put in long days, but just the excitement of like our 8th graders and our freshmen, just the pure volume of like sound and people on a field is very, very impressive. And I think it's just one of the many things that makes Lakota Local Schools great is our band and our music program. So thank you all for being here.
Thank you.
So I don't think I fully appreciated when I first joined the board how much people learn through their extracurriculars. So can you share with us some things that you think will serve you well long-term, that you've learned from your time in band and all that you've done through band?
So the way West does it is we always have 4 drum majors every year, and we do it in pairs. We have 2 seniors and 2 juniors every year, and I feel like that has taught me a lot about teamwork, especially because I can't do anything without talking to Michaela, and then we have 2 other juniors, Alex and Phoebe. We can't do anything without conferring as a group to seeing what is the best for us today, what can we do in the future. So I think it definitely taught me a lot of responsibility about who I'm working with and what I should do to work with them.
Great.
And I definitely agree with the teamwork thing too, but something I wanted to add was perspective. I feel like being here with this being our 4th year, Savannah and I, we see a lot of different people that come in and out of the band. Some people stay, some people don't. But being drum majors, we have to go around to all of the different sections, and that gives us a chance to not only work with them on things that they need help with, but also just hear about their daily lives, hear about the different things they're involved in. And I think being there for 8 hours, 12 hours, however long we're there, gives us a lot of chances to really grow and improve on how we interact with people.
Wonderful. Anything else anyone would like to add, or?
Like more so on the statistical side, I thought marching band helped me a lot with my instrument in itself, like my freshman and sophomore year. I noticed like a lot of physical improvement. I definitely got stronger because we're always working and stuff, but I also learned a lot how to play and get better, and it also helped me improve outside of marching band. So I think it's really good for not just the experience, but also for your talent as well.
Great. Anything?
Definitely being in marching band, you get to be friends with literally everybody. You get to meet so many people from different sections, and since East is 2 schools that goes into 1, you get to meet people who you've never seen before. I know when I joined band, I met all my friends through there, and I'm still friends with them today. And it's just a great way to get out there and do something you're not, most like comfortable with, but do it with people that you want to do it with.
Wonderful. Well, that is so good to hear and makes us so happy to be able to support your program. We would be honored if you would come up forward and take a picture with us at this point. Thank you. All right. Moving on to board reports, Butler Tech. Our meeting continues to be focused on all of the building projects that Butler Tech is continuing to move forward. In addition, it was our last meeting where Superintendent Graff was still at the helm. That is going to be transitioned to former Assistant Superintendent William Sprinkles. He is taking over as the superintendent. Mr. Graff will still be serving as in an advisory capacity to help see out the construction project, so he will be on a part-time basis helping with that. So it was nice to be able to celebrate all that he's done and the wonderful position he's left Butler Tech in, and we look forward to working with Dr. Sprinkles moving forward. Also, I was awarded a piece of spiritware based on everyone here and our curriculum department's efforts of going to Student Showcase. Lakota was the best represented in our Student Showcase. So we took the honors away from Fairfield, who had won twice in a row. So we kept them from getting the hat trick of 3. And yeah, that was nice to be able to have some bragging rights. And thank you for everyone for showing up and being there to celebrate our students. So. With that, I'll move to the policy committee.
We recently had a policy committee. One was to review policy 5111. If you would remember, we had already updated an AG around that. We had actually passed a resolution in our last meeting, so this was just making sure that that policy was in place for your approval on this particular agenda. This is about children of staff members who live outside the district being able to bring their children to Lakota local schools as one of the advantages of being a staff member. So the policy will really, if approved tonight, would really just complete that whole complete process. The other thing, I feel like I talk about this at every meeting, but I also feel like I would be remiss if I did not inform all of us in our community about where we are with cell phones. If you remember last year in 24-25, the state requirement was for us to be collaborative and develop a community-based or community input forth cell phone policy, which we did, and we approved that in March. Well, then the state changed their mind, and they dictated that we are mandated that we would put in a cell phone policy of theirs saying that there would be at least some type of ban on possession or usage. That came down in June. We did pass that, meaning that students during the instructional periods could not use their phones. We did not deal with possession or anything like that, but they could not use their phones during the instructional class periods. However, since our last update of that, which, yes, that was July, the state has further defined the instructional day to mean all-encompassing of school hours. So what that means is in January, we will, probably prior to January, because it has to be in place by January, we will put forth another policy that is mandated by the state that says cell phones cannot be utilized during the school day in their entirety. So meaning cafeteria, recess, hallways, anything of that nature. So we have our current model, which is the instructional periods or class periods, kind of those kind of in-between bells or cafeterias. Our students are able to utilize those phones currently. That will be changing per the new state law that will go into effect in January. So I just wanted to make us all aware of that because we will start our communication early so that we have a steady drip of that communication pieces to our families and our students and working with our principals about what that will look like. And then we will have a policy in place by January per state mandate.
Any questions on that? Just to clarify, also, we went with the instructional day definition that is used
For
when we look
attendance
at hours
laws.
and attendance. So we were going, when we used the instructional day that we implemented in our policy, with consistency for how it counts for our hours that we get credit for our students being here.
That is correct. So
But this is now a second definition that the state has come up with of what instructional day is
They
my
do have
understanding.
contradictory definitions of how instructional day is defined versus cell phone versus attendance. And like I said, we grounded ours in the definitions that we have, which you can find on Department of Education and Workforce. But after that policy was passed, I don't think that they had clearly thought through their intended definition, so they have revamped that to be more extensive, albeit though it is not in line with our attendance definition of instructional day.
All right, thank you. Facilities Committee?
So as we know, in master facilities, we continue to meet very, very regularly. Our theme this year during the school year is we are building our future one piece at a time. And when you say the word build, I think most people do think about master facilities. But again, our theme is much more encompassing than that. We will be dealing with creating a strategic plan, creating a culture blueprint. But certainly this fall semester, we are on a steady trajectory around building or completing the master facilities plan. Adam and I have a pretty regular cadence along with Betsy and that we are going out and sharing informational sessions. Again, our job is not to persuade anyone one way or the other, but to make sure that our community is informed and our voters are informed so that they can then make an informed decision come November. So we are just literally going to kind of walk through the presentation that we normally give a little bit later on. And so that you can see kind of what that looks like, and then ask any questions so that we can continue to refine that message for our community and our stakeholders. Right. Let's see. You see those slides?
Did you send them to?
I did. Tech has them.
Do you have the slides?
There we go. Thank you. So as you know, this journey started quite a while back. In 2017 or so, we started engaging our community around the need for a master facilities plan, right? What were we looking for if we were going to construct new buildings, and what we would hope to see or have impact on the educational programming. And so some major themes came out of that. Again, these are going all the way back to 2017 and current. We've given surveys, we had stakeholder input, we did thought exchanges, and the big takeaways for that were flexible learning spaces, so that to be modernized in our education and having more ability to pivot and be agile in the classroom, whether that is in education itself or the spaces themselves. The other piece was fewer building transitions. For those who are unaware, right now our current configuration is K2, 3 through 6, 7, 8, 9, and then 10 through 12. So that's a lot of different experiences, not only for our students, but our families. And we've heard from our families and our students that just when you get used to a building, it's time to change again. Or if you have the freshman building, you have 1 year and then you're done. And so the thought was to reduce some of those transitions so that our families can have better socialization, better understanding of processes and procedures within the building, but also just better relationships with our staff and understanding how a building functions. The number one thing that I heard about in my listening and learning sessions last year was smaller class sizes. Our class sizes are pretty much at the cap of our current thresholds. That threshold is around, depending on the grade level, 27 or 28. In some instances, we are over those thresholds, and we would like to see that number be more in about the 24 range, so 24 students per one adult or teacher in the classroom. I was asked the question the other day of, well, why don't you just add teachers? It's not that simple, meaning that we don't have any space, particularly in 3-6, particularly. So if I wanted to add a classroom, it's not a possibility because I don't have a classroom space to put those in, and we can't have second grade on a cart. That's not how instruction works. And then last but not least, another thing that we heard about was safety and security. Making sure that we have secure vestibules, making sure that we have ADA compliance. A lot has changed in education in the last 20 years around safety and security, and we want to make sure that our buildings meet the needs of those ever-changing and evolving safety and standards. I think it's helpful just to see some spaces that we can wrap our heads around, because not all of our community members are in our buildings at all times. And so this is an example of a learning space. The one that you will see there is Adina. That is our innovation hub, and then you will see that compared to Reading. I'm looking at a different slide. You will see the Lakota East Science Lab, and the Sycamore Lab. Again, the ability to pivot. We don't have that ability. What I mean by that is our science labs are very, very stationary, right? The labs or the benches are where they are. So if you want to do collaboration, if you want to do centers, if you want to do anything like that, the furniture does not have the ability to pivot, and therefore your education is more static in that moment. You don't have that natural collaboration or communications opportunities that you would in a more flexible open space that can pivot to what you need. I particularly think of like a physics lab, right? Physics labs involve cars and airplanes and all kinds of things, and we just don't have the space to be able to move the furniture to be able to do that, and so our kids are in the hallway, sometimes our kids are in the parking lot. We're making it work, just not super conducive to the type of learning that we want to see in our classrooms. The next space you see here is the innovation hub that I was mentioning. One is at Adina, one is at Reading. We have a little niche kind of carved out, but again, you will see in the Reading space, there's lots of technology, there's lots of different types of seating, there's lots of different opportunities for communication, collaboration. I know I keep mentioning those soft skills, but those are workforce and college-ready skills that we really want to develop, and right now our spaces really just, again, aren't conducive to that. The next might be my favorite picture or my least favorite picture, depending on how you want to interpret it. This is Liberty Junior versus Mason. Mason has dedicated collaboration spaces for things like intervention, enrichment, their MTSS model. We are doing that by pulling children out into the hallway and having makeshift opportunities. Again, this is just not the educational environment that is most conducive for the learning that we want to see. I think oftentimes when we think of learning, we think of how we grew up in a classroom, maybe with a teacher front and center. That is no longer what education looks like today. It is much more, like I said, center-based, much more collaborative, lots of group work, lots of hands-on. Students are engaged. It's a lot more messy and loud probably than what we were all used to. And hallway spaces are really just not conducive for that type of learning. The next is the cafeteria, and I would also couple that with restrooms, particularly from our students, but also our staff. We just, as far as restrooms, the placement in the building, how many we have for our student bodies to pick specifically in our larger buildings like our high schools, functionality of restrooms, and I don't say that tongue-in-cheek. In fact, Ms. Casper and I were just having that conversation prior to this meeting. And then the cafeteria itself, it's very cavernous, it's very large, particularly with our students who have kind of sensory issues or volume issues and just need a quieter space. Again, it's very cavernous, it doesn't have any breakouts or distinctions, and so to create a more intimate setting for, just like we would want as diners in our cafeteria, but again, also a space that can pivot to meet the needs instead of just one open, large room. We did have visioning sessions last spring around master facilities, and I'd like to differentiate that from design. So oftentimes when you think about a building, it's about, what color is the coving and what do the rooms look like and what are the windows and the colors, and that's all fabulous, but that is not what should be our driving conversation. Rather, our driving conversation should be, what is our educational vision? What do we want the programming to look like that our buildings can complement? And we had a really robust conversation about, again, how education has changed in the last 20 years, and our spaces need to better reflect that and better prepare our students for the universities and the workforces that they are entering. Businesses no longer have static rooms. They have abilities to pivot, to engage in collaboration, and to really build those soft skills that we want to see in our students.
One back. Okay, so to talk about the difference when we look at levies. So we have three different types of levies that we can put on for property, one being an operating levy. Think about an operating levy as going to be like your personal checking account. It's what would go toward your day-to-day expenses. Then the next type being a permanent improvement levy, which that is going to go for items that can be for 5 years or longer, or more like a savings account. And then finally, you would have a bond issue, which that is going to be more like a mortgage. That's going to be only going to pay debt for buildings. So these are legally what we're allowed to use different types of levies for. So once these would be collected, we cannot use them for anything besides the intended purpose. So the last time Lakota has been on the ballot was in 2013 for an operating levy and PI. That was a combo. That was 3 mills operating with 2 mills of PI, and that was in 2013. And then the last time for a bond issue or only to make debt payments was in 2005. So bond issue and partnering with the state, this is where we're joining the Expedited Local Partnership Program, or the ELP program, through the Ohio Facilities Construction Commission. This is allowing us to get 32% reimbursement back of performing the items that were approved in the master facility project. Or essentially when the dollars come back to Lakota, that's going to be an additional $200 million that would offset finishing out the project and any additional expenditures that we could run into down the road.
So as we talk about master facilities, one of the key things is what are we renovating, what are we decommissioning, what is staying the same, and then where are those located? So on the map, and you do have these slides in front of you as well in case it's easier to see, as part of the OFCC partnership, they evaluate your building conditions, and they do that over a pretty vast set of criteria, everything from the condition of the building, the utilities, the HVAC, the safety, the gradations of what it would do to build, and they give all of the criteria ratings, and then it gives you an overall number for that individual site. I do think it's important to understand that if we disagreed with something that the state said, we can appeal that process, and we did. So it's not just a one-way conversation. Again, ultimately, there has to come an agreement about the facility sites, but you do have the ability to appeal if you disagree, which we did. In the conversation, you have 3 options. You have kind of good, the building would be left alone. You also have renovation options, and then you also have the decommissioning. So you see that as the red, green, and yellow. I think it is important just to put in the back of your mind that sometimes it is cheaper to renovate than build anew, right? Sometimes we forget that, but when you look at the entire
Cheaper to build.
Build new than to renovate, excuse me. Cheaper to build new than to renovate because you get into the structure of the building, right? You run into, we've all renovated our homes, we've all done those things. And so sometimes it is more cost-effective to build brand new than to renovate that existing space because of the land itself, the structure itself. So in recent conversations, in fact, last week, we decided officially upon the 4 new elementary schools and where they would be built. And I think this is a very important step for our community to understand where those 4 new builds would be as far as our elementary schools. So circled, you will see kind of in the Adena Shawnee world, we think it is very important to have a school in that quadrant to meet the needs of our community. We, based on, again, all of the criteria of those buildings, the land available, all of that, Shawnee will be the site that is built upon, and then Adena would be decommissioned. Then going up to the Hopewell ESC, and then ECS, excuse me, and Hopewell Junior, looking at that as one big plot, we will put a building there. I'm not sure exactly where on that land it will be configured, but if you think of that as one big plot, there would be a building there. Again, with Woodland and Liberty Junior, lots of land there, so very nice space. If you think of that as one comprehensive site, there will be a building there as well. And then last but not least, you do have Heritage and then the West Freshman Creekside Central Campus. Because of the, again, size of the lot, the access of building, things of that nature, it was decided that West Freshman Creekside Central will be the location of that. I think another determining factor of that in our conversations is that is in Westchester. That is on the Westchester side of the line. And we want to make sure that we are thinking through the equitable nature of buildings on Liberty Township versus Westchester. So one of the questions that comes up is what happens to Heritage and Adena land? And that is an ongoing discussion. And what I mean by that, we will continue to have those conversations in master facilities, but one is, we could keep the land for further needs, again, enrollment, as we continue to update those enrollment studies that we're doing. It could be that we partner with one of the townships and really kind of look at how we can have a community purpose for that. Maybe it's a building, maybe it's an indoor athletic facility, but it also has needs for our senior citizens, or opportunities for a building structure that can be accessible during the day to meet community needs. Or it could be we just need the fields, right? As we talked about in the band situation, not all of our fields are ideal, and so sometimes we need those fields not only for our own purposes, but again for community purposes like recreation or sports or club sports. So again, really just keeping our options open of what that looks like for future needs, but really working closely with both townships to see how we can best partner and really create a collaboration with our communities. As far as new grade bands, I did mention transitioning students was something that we wanted to decrease because we wanted our families to have kind of good lengths of time to not only build relationships with not only students but also parents and teachers, and then just to understand and feel acclimated to the building. So our new grade bands would be preschool and Liberty. Right now, we also do have some preschool rooms in Van Gordon. Those would all be consolidated to Liberty. We would have a K-5 band, so that is a really nice stretch of families to become accustomed to a building, to understand and build those relationships. 6-8, so sixth grade would come into the junior high. And then last but not least, our freshman campus would come into the main campus, and we would have a more kind of comprehensive high school experience. I think the one thing that, as Adam and I have gone through with our community in this, is there are questions about there's only 2 junior highs. That is correct. We had those conversations early on. So they will be larger in nature. However, we are being very deliberate, not only in our instructional model, but when it comes to time to build those buildings, about how we structure those so they feel like a middle school model and not a junior high model. So I always compare it to like the Harry Potter house idea, where you have cohorts of students that move together so that they have socialization opportunities. Again, they have really strong relationships with their teachers. And then they have the staffing or instructional model that we're building on, working on right now, is so that we have intervention models delivered during the day by their teachers, not a different adult than what they're accustomed to. So again, trying to be proactive so that when those new buildings come to fruition, that we already have the instructional piece kind of weighted through, so there's not new on top of new. Again, when we talk about buildings, it's about enhancing programming. The building is nice, but again, it's to complement what we want to see in our educational experience. And so one of those is consistent specials. If you go back to 2011, I was a teacher in Lakota East at the time. Specials took a hit. in the K-6 world. And what I mean by that is there's not a real steady rotation. Kids have them in half-year experiences, and it's not an everyday experience. And so long-term, though, what you see in band, in art, and things of that nature is that has a long-term impact on programming. When you have fewer touch points, or when those touch points are delayed to later grades, things like fine motor skills, musicality, reading, those are impacted. So even though it seems like a K-6 issue, it really has an impact on the K-12 program. New learning opportunities and access to electives sooner. Right now, again, with space, our learning opportunities, particularly in K-6, are kind of capped. Even in the junior high, we just don't have space to expand. And so really, we would like to have student voice on what electives we continue to develop. You know, you've heard me talk about opportunities, particularly in world language in our junior high. But again, picking or selecting on music, really, if you take 6th grade into the junior high, that is an earlier access to the music program. It's also when we start to perform, and I know our families and our students have said very loudly, we would like to be able to perform for our community and for our parents and for our schools at earlier opportunities. And so the 6th grade will at least allow us to do that, but with more space, we could also look to maybe perhaps bring that into the elementary schools. Smaller class size, again, we talked about at the start, but really looking at a number rather of 24 rather than 27, 28, 29, sometimes 30 individuals in a class. Again, that teacher relationship and knowing your students and the ability to do intervention models and enrichment is really impacted by the size of classrooms with the ratio of the teacher. Counseling. Our counseling model, we're managing, but what I mean by that is our counseling ratio right now, I'm gonna pick on our junior highs particularly, is 1 to 700 or 1 to 750. You did hear me correctly when I said junior high children with one counselor for 700 to 750 students. And so again, it's not as easy as just hire the counselor. We need that space to have confidential conversations, to make sure we're having groups that we need. So really, again, looking to reduce that student ratio with our counselors so that we can have a more systematic and approach of fidelity with offering the counseling and our services that students provide. SROs, we talked about safety. Currently, we share some of our SROs. There are some buildings that share sites or share SROs at those sites. And so with a smaller footprint from 21 buildings to 16, we would be able to have a SRO at every dedicated space. We do realize that some of those buildings are larger, and so we could look at the needs of that. But again, safety, I think it would at least, not only our community, but our administrators, our students, our SROs are a great asset in our community, and making sure that we have that safety element across all in a 1-to-1 ratio would be super helpful.
Okay, to talk about the timeline and how we got to where we're at today. So this is essentially looking at a 3-phase project, this master facility project. So the planning and design, that actually began back in 2018. It's hard to believe that it was that long ago. That's where a lot of the community feedback came from. That's where a lot of the grade band structures came in. And so taking us to November of this year, that's when the ballot issue would be on. Then we would begin construction 2026 to 27 and getting the grade bands 6 through 12, that would be operational to start the 28-29 school year or fiscal year 29. Then we would have phase 2, which would begin with the following year, and that would have buildings operational pre-K through 5, ready to go for the 29-30 school year, and then demolishing the buildings that were phased out. And then with the ELP credits, that would be anticipated to come back to Lakota around 2033, 20 to 2035, right in that range, or after 2033. And that's when we would use that to finish out the project of anything that was remaining.
I think an important timeline is that 28, 29, and Adam will certainly talk about 29, but in 28, after you get those grades 6 through 12 built, you will get a little relief moving that 6th grade into the junior high, and then the full tuition of the class size that we're hoping for would come in the following year when the new elementary schools are completed.
So to talk about why 2029 or fiscal year 29 is important. So on the other slide, that was 28, 29 school year, fiscal 29 in my world. That's important because we have forecasted in May, that was the first time it was seen. We have it again in the one that we'll go over here in just a little bit, that we have an operating levy on the forecast. So what this project is hoping to do is avoid the operating levy. That's where we're trying to be. So currently, the operating levy, how this is working, you'll see in bullet point number 2, we have actually 2.28 mils that's going to roll off in 2028. So now if we go back up to bullet point 1, the operating levy we have forecasted is 3.4. So if you go back to 2013, that was 3 and 2. 3 mils of operating, 2 mils of PI. This is actually looking at 3.4 mils of operating, and then we would also have 2 mils of PI. Now that won't show up on a 5-year forecast because that's only your general fund. So when you look at the 2.28 coming off, and then you look at 3.4 and the 2, that's where, to keep everything status quo, we're looking at that would be an increase in collection year 29, that would be an increase of 3.12 mils, versus if we look at the new structuring to be more operationally efficient, roll the dollars from operating over to educating, that's where we're looking at 2.66 mils, where actually it's about half a mil cheaper than doing status quo where we're at today, so we can get some operational efficiency as well as some programming enhancements there. Everything's lined up apples to apples to not collect until calendar year 29. That was part of the resolutions that the board passed. One was for intent, the intent of, well, actually they were both intent, sorry. One was intent of the 2.66, and then the second one that we had, that was on June 30th, if you remember, and then on July 21st, that's where we had the intent of timing to make sure that this did not collect, so that everybody could see a more apples to apples comparison of what these true costs would be. So 2.66 mils, what this would look like to a taxpayer, this is from calendar year 26 collections. So if you look at that, yes, I want everybody to hear this. Yes, the ballot is going to say $208 per 100,000, with 175 of that being 4.99 on the bond issue, and then 0.95 on the PI portion. 208 would be the total. Because we're timing this with the roll-off, the actual impact on tax bills would be $93.10, not 208 per 100,000. So this is a timing component. This is hard to communicate. This has been challenging, but we're really trying as hard as we can to hold off these collections till we get the drop. Problem being, we don't have buildings that could just be operational overnight. So we have a construction timing and aligned with current collection timing to then have the impact on the community, which would impact all of us sitting up here today. So if the November 4th bond issue was not successful, we have to base a 5-year forecast on everything that we know at the moment. So what we have at the moment is what we have. It's the current building footprint. We would not be able to assume anything different until we had a different direction, which is what the community's ask is on November 4th. So the hope is that we would be able to avoid that altogether. Again, this is higher on the current status quo side than it would be on the new operating footprint side. Feel like I'm missing something. I think I covered it in the previous slide a little bit more than I had before. So that's really what this is coming down. And the community has the ability to cast vote on what they believe. If they want us to go a little more operationally efficient model, then that's the option A, or option B is just status quo.
In my non-treasurer brain, I say that as now or later, not now and later, or. There's an or there. And what I mean by that is November, if, it passes, it would be operational savings, a blueprint that's going from 21 to 16 buildings with enhanced programming and buildings to complement, new buildings to complement that programming. Or if that is unsuccessful, we would see that later in an operating levy where there is no operational savings, the very same footprint that we have right now, status quo at best, for programming, and I'll come back to that in just a second, and maintain the buildings that we have, some of which are definitely more difficult to maintain than others, like West Freshman. But I say the status quo at best for programming, because the reality is, as numbers, if class size numbers continue to increase, there's going to come a point where we have to prioritize and make some different decisions. It is not educationally sound to sit with 31 plus students in a building, and so at that time we would have to, or per classroom, we would have to look at the options of how do you get space back? How do you look at the available space you have and say, where is that space going to come from? Again, there are a plethora of options, but things like specials come into the conversation. All-day kindergarten comes into the conversation. Again, when you're out of options, you have to exhaust all options, and you have to look at creatively with the space that you have. So I just think it's a now or later option. I think also someone asked me, well, if you have enhanced programming and you have more counselors, and that we will not have to add staff to have the enhanced programming. Now, we might have to look at how we staff buildings differently because we have fewer buildings, how we look at their licensure and things of that nature, but it would not be that we would have buildings that then we would have to go back and say, now we need staff for those buildings. We would look at our existing staff with attrition and retirements, and we would look at licensure, and we would staff accordingly based on those needs.
It's going to be a recalibration.
Mm-hmm. Any questions for us?
Yeah, I have a question. Yeah, Adam, I want you to explain this this page again, because you said the actual is supposed to be $93.10 per 100,000, but you said there's another misleading number somewhere. Is it 134? Where would one see that?
Say that again, Isaac.
You said there's another number somewhere that one can confuse it with this 93.
On the ballot. So when one goes to vote on November 4th, what they're going to see on the ballot is going to be 4.99. That's a legal, that's the number that we have to use. Mm-hmm. So we've had 3 different independent opinions to make sure that the actual bond isn't going to need to collect more than 3.99 mils, although the ballot number is going to reflect 4.99.
Okay.
So we're confident in that number. Then 4.99, I believe, is 175 per 100,000, and then the portion that's the PI, the 0.95, that brings it up to 208 per 100,000. That's what's actually going to be seen on the bond, on the ballot issue. Sorry, yes, on the ballot issue. Now, the $93.10 number that you're seeing right there, what that is that's saying that when you factor in the drop of 2.28, that'll be in calendar year 28, and this collection doesn't start until calendar year 29. So after that falls off, then from the upcoming invoice that people are going to see, the impact's going to be $93.10 per 100,000.
That makes sense.
It does when we talk about it. It is really hard to make sure that we get the message out, because people are going to see $208 per 100,000 when that's not going to be. That's part of that. If you go back to June 30th, the resolution of intent to never collect more than 2.66 mils more than the tax year 2025 amounts. That's what that was about.
Okay. Thank you for that explanation.
Adam and I have had the comment of, what home can you buy in Liberty Township or Westchester for $100,000? That is just, the reason we use that number is because it's easy math for people to do the calculation. But also, as a taxpayer, when I'm saying, hey, what does that mean for my own daily living? I put it in perspective of things that I purchase on a day-to-day, right? Not proud of this fact, but every day I spend $7.06 on a cup of coffee, every day, right? So relatively, that's a cup of coffee times whatever my house is worth that I could make a different choice, right? I'm not saying that would, I don't want to devalue anything of what we're saying of that impact to people, but I think if you look at that number of what we could get as a community and as a school district, there's an opportunity for us to invest in our future.
Big message that we want to make sure that gets out there is we aren't taking anything for granted, and every dollar that is collected from anyone in the community is critically important.
Right.
Any other
So
questions?
yeah, so if the county auditor values your house at 350, you just take the 9310 and would multiply it by 3.5. That's why they always use the 100,000, just to make easier math.
Other questions from the board? So Adam, I know that when people go to the county auditor's website, it will show the higher amount and not show what's actually ultimately going to be collected. Is there a way for us to even build like a secondary link to that site, or, you know, where people can put in the number they got from that site, but then our numbers would be calculated from there so they can actually see for themselves, putting in their home value, what that net effect is going to be? Is that an opportunity for us to help with the education, since they're not able to get an accurate reflection of what's happening on the auditor site?
We do have all of the actual values as on the county auditor's database. We've extracted all of that. Let's look into, I'll work with Ms. Fuller to see what functionality our web page would have, because there's a lot of information that we would want to make sure that we're clearly putting out there.
Sure.
Because, you know, we actually sent a request to Ms. Nix, and completely understand where she's coming from, of to keep everything simple and fair and equitable across the board. What the ballot language says is how they use their calculators, although we have some variables coming in that wouldn't play into this, and so they're not going to be able to put an asterisk by it or anything like that. But if we can get the message out to have people come to maybe our page so that we can give that calculation with timing, with all of those components, you know, assuming we can do that. I can make a spreadsheet. I just don't know how we can get a spreadsheet so that everybody could access that.
Or maybe
we
even-
can.
Or maybe even if we did it, yeah, so there's increments, like it might not have your house at, you know, 337,000, but you can see what 300 would cost, and you can see what 350 would cost, and you can
Oh, sure.
certainly
Yeah.
give a close estimate. And again, I
Sure.
know there's a lot of complexities with homestead, et cetera, but we could certainly,
And also on top of that, you know, we've heard some feedback on, well, we know a reappraisal's coming for tax year 26 that will collect in 27. You know, how could that work? Well, think of it as a snapshot of next year, as if the values went way up, then it's still going to come out in the wash somewhere around that, assuming that you were at the average of everybody else. That's where if the increase is more, then the millage rolls back still with House Bill 920.
yeah, so just to clarify, so what you're saying is if my property value goes up by 20%, the millage that's going to be charged is going to go down.
It would be
by
less than the 2.66.
Exactly, so that on average, we're still collecting that $93, and it's not going to be
That's
a
the
big windfall that is the perception.
No,
I've read
that's
many
correct.
times that if there's an increase in property values of 30%, you're going to get 30% more, so why are you doing this? And just, that's not
Yeah, we
what
actually had said
happens.
at presentation that if we missed the mark on that, that's why we've had the multiple independent evaluations of this, to make sure that we weren't over-promising and going to underdeliver. I actually said at one of them that you would probably hear communications from a different we, because we probably wouldn't be employed here anymore if that was the case.
You keep saying that.
So, yeah, but it's more than our word. You know, we had a resolutions drawn up so that people would have something that they could actually look at, more than just trust me. You know, nobody likes that. I don't like that if people tell me that.
Dr. Whiteley, I have a question. When I sit here as a board member, I focus in on the buildings and the dollars and the cents. But when I sit here as a parent and I hear things, and we talk about less than optimal educating environments, when I hear class sizes of 30, or I hear the fact that my child doesn't get exposure to music and art consistently in elementary school, so by the time that they're now in high school and choosing electives, they're not even considering those paths. Am I incorrect in understanding that we're really talking about our student achievement and how we're actually getting them to the point that we want them to achieve?
I think we're talking about student achievement, student experience, the entire collective educational experience. But certainly, all of those things are tied to student achievement. When you do research on early exposure to music, language, specials, those have direct impacts on the course. When you reduce class size and you get better one-on-one touch points, more individualized intervention and enrichment, that's going to increase student achievement. So yes, there should be a direct correlation or direct impact between those. The other thing I would say to that is the beauty of Southwest Ohio is that families have options. We are a very educationally robust area of Ohio. And so we want to make sure that not only are we providing a really well-rounded, robust educational experience, but we also want to be competitive with our neighbors as well. And not just in space, but I would also say in educational programming. We have some opportunities to grow there to remain competitive for families that future move in or families that we want to stay.
Especially with the Milliken interchange coming and bringing jobs, we would like it if those people working in those jobs lived in our community and went to our schools. So that's what they wanted to do. I think, too, that one of the hardest things to understand and explain is that when we talk about the ballot language saying $208 and it's really $93, it's hard to focus, and we've got to figure out a way to focus on. People are asking the question, if you don't need all that money, why are you asking for all that money? If you don't need the 208, it's not a case of that we're asking for more than we need. I kind of equate it to, you have the bonds that are rolling off is like your mortgage being paid off. When your mortgage is paid off, you have extra money every month because you aren't paying a mortgage. When our bonds roll off, we will have that money to contribute to the next set of buildings. It's kind of like it's not that we're not asking for more than we need. That's something that I've heard a couple of times.
Yeah, we actually received a question last week as well on, would we ever look at a footprint like what Mason has, where there's only 3 buildings? And although that would probably be like the maximum operation efficiency, just because less typically equals more, but they're huge, they would be much bigger. That came back from part of the planning sessions that we had on the community wanting to continue with neighborhood type schools, especially at the smaller bands.
Well, and the fact that they're 10 square miles and we're 63, so you'd be on a bus a long time.
And the more you centralize, and again, that was the question that we received at the trustee meeting, is the longer children are on buses, right? So as you kind of reduce that footprint even more, there are some trade-offs for transportation and things of that nature. And so again, the largest, particularly from our parent group, was that we wanted those neighborhood schools so that we felt like all of our community was covered in our footprint. The reason that we wanted to give this presentation is we are building our future sessions. We're meeting with PTOs, we're meeting with our staff, we're meeting with our homeowners associations, our churches, our businesses, but we also realize not everyone can make it to those meetings, and so we wanted to give this same presentation in this board meeting tonight so that people can access that online. I would encourage people to continuously go to our website for our FAQ. Betsy and our communication team are constantly as we get questions that we think are relevant, we're like, we should include that. So those are constantly evolving. It's not a static document. And so if you're listening to this or you watch this later and you're like, hey, I would love for you to come and talk to fill in the blank, we can certainly do that. And again, our job is just to make sure that people are informed about the option that will be in front of them in November.
Has there been any thought, sorry, Mrs. Fuller, for what I'm about to ask, has there been any thought of videotaping your presentation and putting it on the website for people that can't maybe get to one of the sessions? I mean, I know you have a lot scheduled, but I wondered if there's any way maybe to videotape one of them or to do a separate videotaped one.
We're videoing this one.
Okay.
But yes, I think that's a great idea.
I mean, I just thought.
Because even though we might have a plethora of opportunities, when you look at schedules of different people and busy and work schedules and all of those things, there are just sometimes that people can't make the opportunities provided. And so I think we want to be able to share the message in any way we can with our community, so again, that everyone is informed as possible.
Yeah.
And with the state share of 32% coming from the state to fund the overall project, the reason we haven't done that in the past is we have not gotten that high of reimbursement, and there has not been the flexibility in design and utilization that there is now, is my understanding. And I also understand that we don't know in the future if we will have that same opportunity to get 32%. As the state continues to evolve what their partnership is with different school districts, that number could significantly change in the future if we aren't able to move forward within a specified time frame.
It's like the cell phone policy. You know, you want to get it locked in and done so that it's not an ever-changing situation. And the OFCC, particularly in the past, was pretty regimented in its offerings, but particularly, I'd say in the last 15 years or so, they have a plethora of options and understand that they need to meet various community needs. So it definitely has more options and availability to pivot and be agile within a design than it used to. And so that's one of the reasons I think that we're exploring that option now, because that co-funding of $200 million, could we locally fund that? We could, but we would not want to put that on our taxpayers when we have a different alternative.
We are extremely fortunate here at Lakota in this school district to have a 32% share.
Yeah, that's.
There is a lot of community, there's a lot of structures that go into our tax base that because they're in place, it helps us to not look the way that we might look when you drive through the community. It helps us to not look quite as wealthy as what our true community picture would be, and a lot of that is due to TIF districts that we have. Those values don't show up in this. If you think about other communities that would have the same look, maybe, if you would drive through, you would probably be looking at more around 10%, not 32. So it's nice to be able to take advantage of that factor to be able to bring in additional dollars back to the community.
Any other questions or comments or anything to share? All right, hearing none, we'll move to board professional development.
Adam and Hannah and Darian and I went to the budget, what do you want to call it? The budget, they used to call it
It used to be bad.
They used to call it the budget analyst something or other. Now they've called it something else, but basically it's through OSBA, Ohio School Boards, the superintendent, BASA, and OASBA, which is the treasurer's organization, just to kind of get a breakdown on some of the things in the budget and how it will affect education. That's where the big cell phone topic came up, because in that presentation, they told us no phones. We're 8 to 5, 8 to 3, no phones. And so when I texted that to Dr. Whiteley, she was like, "Oh, that's just not what they said," when they got the request from the budget. So it's a little bit, it helps you explain a little bit deeply in what it means to your district. Now, unfortunately, in this one was the one that was the most ambiguous, because there's so much not set in stone. For instance, trying to do the property tax reform. So they gave us as much information as they could and as much breakdown they could. And it's always interesting to me because you get to hear from a lot of all the three organizations. So it was really interesting, but it was the first year that I've gone where they said, this is how everything is today. So that's it. Did you
Yeah, I
have
think
anything
that
to
was
add?
I think that was a common theme across the board with all the other attendants. Was even Ms. Casper and I are sitting with one person in between us, and I thought I heard the cell phone different than she did.
Yeah.
So, I think that it was very common that everybody was a little confused, and the presenters was, as we're trying to talk through this, it felt like in the past maybe the session had more fact detail of how the rollout of the new House bill really is.
Yeah.
And this one felt more of, let's talk about all the different variations of this to get to this point, but we're still waiting to see some
The things, this
some
was more
true
of the things that
definitions
could
of how,
happen,
yeah, of
as
how
opposed
this is
to what
going
will
to
happen.
roll
And
out.
they always have a legislative panel, and at the end, they have the legislative panel, and 2 minutes into the panel, the fire drill at the hotel went off. So they had to evacuate the hotel, and the legislators was like, yeah, we're out. So they just ended the conference early, and we never really got to hear from the legislators because they did not stay, which.
One takeaway, it's definitely thankless. Everybody's efforts are, The true belief is everybody's trying to do the best they can.
Yeah.
And everybody's trying to make things go better, but it is becoming more and more complicated with every new House bill, it appears.
Yeah. That's it.
All right.
Yeah, I have something to report on. We had OSBA Southwest Regional Executive Meeting on August 7th, and we started with the tour of U.S. Air Force Museum. And it was very, very educational.
That's so fun.
I have never known that place existed.
Isn't that neat?
It was very great and educational. A lot of information was shared there. We ended up with a meeting at the STEM High School, Riverside in Dayton. The takeaway for us is the new CEO, Mr. Thomas Hostler, who was is going to take his effective September 1st is going to be in the office, and he's very interested in hearing from all the boards. So if we can get to his calendar, whatever challenges we think we have, he wants to hear from all the school districts. So it is open for us to any district that wants to get to his calendar. Then the fall conference is in October. I thought I had the date, but I was trying to pull the date out, but I can't find it. So the fall conference for Southwest Regional will be in October. I'm going to get a date for you.
You'll let us know when you get the date.
Yes. That's it.
Anything else?
That's it.
All right, community committee and community conversation meeting dates and times, again, are attached. Once again, we need to modify our facility meeting committees to be stated as subcommittees on that sheet, so we'll get that modified and reattached. And now we'll go to administrative reports with the 5-year forecast.
See the clicker. Okay, so it's that time of year again, a little sooner, as I mentioned earlier, sooner than usual.
Right.
It's real exciting for me. This is like my Super Bowl. Came early this year. Christmas came early for me. So as before, this is a draft review. The draft was attached. That is out there on board docs. I apologize for not getting this out sooner. I want everybody to know this. When we do our organizational meeting, just like everybody else does, we have some family planning as well that took me to Indianapolis over the weekend to the Children's Museum. So I kind of got a little bit behind on getting this done, so we got that buttoned up today. So we'll go over the high overview of this. We'll talk about some revenue expense, and then some changes, and then planning as we move forward. As always, please let me know if you guys have any ideas that you would like to have added, modeled, simulated, any of the above, and we'll get that taken care of. So this is a 5-year forecast. It's 3 years of historical. This year, it's actually a 4-year forecast. Sorry about that. It will have 3 years of actual per House Bill 96, and it will have 4 forecasted years, the current year and 3 additional. So I'll get that updated on this slide as well. It's a planning tool. It's something that we'll use internally. We use as governance just to help kind of lay out the direction and make sure that we're not overshooting the financial obligations as we do this, and it is a legal requirement. So when we look at revenue, revenues have increased from May. With House Bill 96, the increased funding components, it actually brought in one that is also a performance incentive. This came up, so that's good. However, it needs to be noted, you'll know that when we look at the assumptions, every year we've had a line in there that's been a guarantee that's fluctuated from as high at one point as 8 to as low at one point as 0, and then it came right back on at 6. It's been usually hovering right around the 6. We are the second highest district in the state for guarantees. First highest is Mason. So we have now in the guarantee 17.85 million. We all have to be aware of this. If the guarantee was to go away, this is going to completely change everything drastically quickly. So we need to make sure that we're aware of this. Actually, this is in fiscal 26 and fiscal 27. The simulator that we've created is looking at it's going to hit 24 million before coming down slightly to 23 in fiscal 28 and 29. So that's something that we have got to be aware of. The property tax reappraisal that's coming on in fiscal year 27 will be the first glimpse of that, and that's because it collects tax year 26 is when that happens, and it collects in calendar year 27, or the first half settlement would be fiscal 27. And then we also have, as I mentioned briefly, of why we have the payments or the OFCC amounts higher. We need to look into the TIF tax increment financing. I need to do in this model, I need to do a little more simulation to make sure that we get some of the roll-offs modeled a bit better. So we just had the committee meeting where we reviewed those values, and I'll have this updated for the Finance Committee review. And again, before we have this up for approval on, I wrote down the date, September 22nd. Another thing I want to make sure everybody knows, so our regularly scheduled October board meeting is on October 20th. These are due by October 15th, so that's why we're doing this August and then again in September for the final. Good news on the revenues. Interest has stayed up a little bit higher than we anticipated. It's remained positive in this political climate that we're in, where we are all waiting on the other shoe to drop. So we're not getting overly aggressive on our interest estimates, but they have been staying positive, so that's a wonderful thing. Now, when we look at the expense side, we saw at the end of fiscal 25, we knew this was coming, a large amount of retire, which resulted in fiscal 26 and retire replacements. So that results in a bit of savings on the salary schedules. That was because people were eligible to retire from 35 years down to 32 all in 1 year. So that kind of hit all at once that we weren't really anticipating. But that did have positive impact on our salaries line. Then we also are looking at this point in the year, we are in a better position for our open positions that are unfilled. We have built a line into that so that we can keep tracking those. So shout out to the HR department doing a wonderful job there to make sure that we get those positions filled and ready to go. On the healthcare side for benefits, I am very happy to say that we got preliminary numbers in just last week. I said, hey, we got the forecast coming. We need to get some things moving and even look at trends for prior years, August up to the end of the year. And right now we're looking at 4%. We had forecasted 6%. This is a huge, huge, huge win, considering since we've went self-insured, this is the first glimpse of coming back into what we were used to. So, with that being said, I hope I don't jinx anything. But that has been a positive change in the forecasted amounts. We had it forecasted at 6s in fiscal 26 through 29 last year. So now we have this one projected out to, this is all shown 4s. So we have that. Then on programming, transportation, I am not happy to announce that we kind of got behind the 8 ball a bit with some of the assumptions we had in May on a reduction in the transportation expense due to purchasing back the fleet. We needed to get those done in time for the bills to reduce, and we opted to slow that process down. We're coming into a bid year, slow that down so that we didn't rush and make a mess. We didn't want to waste any dollars. We'll spend a little more time doing a due diligence there. So that was projected to be a $3 million decrease this year. We have taken that out for fiscal 26 because we didn't have enough runway to get that one done. Now on the support services, as always, these are things like SROs. These are SROs, ESC contracts, different purchase services that we have. We are always going to forecast, and transportation as well, we're always forecasting those to be filled based on the contracts. So that has been an issue that we've ran into years past. Of we're wanting the programming, we're wanting it to be delivered. We just might have staffing implications like we do, they may have had. So that's something that we are forecasting that to come back in full as we always would, and then we'll adjust as we get ready for the February forecast if necessary. And then we still have reserve accounts built in. These are for curricular, for severance, and for transportation. Again, the transportation being to look at the purchase back of that fleet to stabilize those costs over the long term. Okay, so changes from May. We did have, as mentioned, we had the state aid came in a bit higher, and that was due to the components. Although we had those come in higher, we are we need to be very, very aware that if the guarantee went away, we are going to be us and our neighbor is going to be in a very precarious situation. Other revenues, interest, state aid, those are state tuitions, those are staying up. And then this is the first year that you'll see the first glimpse when we shave this back down to a 4-year forecast. You're not going to see the full year come on, but you'll see the full impact of 3.4 mils as what we've forecasted. And then staffing, I can say that we've got pretty stable. We had some questions out there, so we'll work through that between here and the Finance Committee next board meeting to make sure that we have all the planning captured. Healthcare's stabilized, knock on wood, and then transportation, and finally programming with the facilities. The facilities, as we mentioned in the previous, until we have something definite, which would be after November, we have to forecast based on what we currently have. So we have some programming enhancements. I'll look to get us a simulation created so that we can get a bit of a glimpse of this before the September 22nd approval, but that's going to need to stay unless we have changes to what we're currently doing. So, based on if the new model would go. Okay, thank you in the back. So as we look for future planning, again, we will always work to align strategic planning, district goals, community goals, everything coming together to make sure that we have a bit of a roadmap laid out so that everybody will be in the loop on what we can't do as we work forward. Any questions?
Anyone?
2 financial related presentations in one night. I'm glad everybody's still awake.
Thank you for presenting the preliminary, and we certainly appreciate how much variability there is right now in everything that's being decided. So I'm sure reviewing all those assumptions and trying to land that as the temporary snapshot being accurate today that may not be accurate tomorrow is a challenge as the financial professional for us.
We will definitely, one submission to the next. I will say that this submission, typically by timing of when we get second half real estate settlements, it's going to be tight, it's going to be close. I don't want to jeopardize getting you guys the information because we have good calculations on how we base that, but definitely when we get to the February one, we're not going to, I don't see any way that we'll have first half settlements by the time we have to submit. So there's a lot of changes, a lot of things that now with new timing that we'll look at when we get ready for our organizational meeting so that we can make the board schedules make sense with some of these natural cadence of submissions.
So help us with the impact of the settlements not being completed at the time of the next forecast so that we can prepare for that.
We always, now you may remember in the May where I was very proud of the fact that we were within like $50,000 of the actual settlement from what we had forecasted. There are so many variables that come into this. I wish it would basically mean that I had a magic wand because you don't know what the delinquencies are going to be. You don't know who's going to opt to pay all the tax bill versus pay with escrow, which is 50-50. First half, second half settlements. You don't know how this is actually going to come through, but when we had the May, we always had final. We always had actual. So if you look at May to actual, those lines that were based around property tax settlements were always within $1 rounding, depending on how that may have landed. So they were always spot on. We will be basing this off of formulas. So We have good formulas. The formulas will all be set to when we have the second half settlement. We always set them to what the tax year 24 they collected in calendar year 25. So we look at what those ratios are, and that's what we'll set that to. And that's how it'll be again, but one tax year over the next could shift a bit.
Do we know why the timing changed?
I know why they had said the timing had changed in the past. I don't exactly know why the timing had changed forward now. I will say for me personally, having this in August is kind of going to keep me in the fast swing of fiscal year end to this, and then I believe I'll have a little bit of a break. So personally, I don't necessarily hate it, because then I can have a little break, and then I can do the second forecast when the weather's crummy by February, and then maybe have a little bit of a spring versus in May. So, but I don't know exactly why they did the shift to next fiscal year. They let us do the phase in now, but it'll be August and February. I don't know exactly what the logic behind that was at this time.
All right.
That, just like everything else, we'll audible, we'll figure it out, and we'll move on.
Any other questions or thoughts for Mr. Zink? All right, we'll move forward to board action items, 7A and B, approval of policy and approval of the resolution for construction manager at risk. Do I have a motion?
So moved.
Do I have a second?
Second.
Discussion?
The only thing I would like to draw attention to, we talked about policy from earlier, is the Skanska, Shook, and Megan construction manager at risk. We went through the RFP process. We did interviews for that. This is just making sure that the public is aware through this resolution of who we are partnering with, as well as continuing with Elevar, our current architect. So again, just wanted to make sure that that is known in that partnership for the master facilities.
Any further questions or discussion? Hearing none, Mr. Zink, please call the roll.
Ms. Casper?
Yes.
Mr. D?
Yes.
Ms. French?
Yes.
Mr. Horton?
Yes.
Ms. Schaefer?
Yes. We now have treasurer's recommendations A through C, approval of board minutes, approval of the monthly financial reports, and approval of the fiscal year 25 advance returns. Do I have a motion?
So moved.
Second?
Second.
Discussion?
I will throw out there that on the advance returns, typically we'll see those in July. Those were missed in July. By law, anything that we advance out, think of it as a loan to another fund, has to be paid back in the following fiscal year. So this is just returning the advance that was sent out last fiscal year.
Any further questions or discussion? Hearing none, Mr. Zink, please call the roll.
Ms. French?
Yes.
Mr. D?
Yes.
Ms. Casper?
Yes.
Mr. Horton?
Yes.
Ms. Schaefer?
Yes. We have superintendent's recommendations A through D, approval of personnel items, approval of contracts, approval of the transportation routes for the 25-26 school year, and approval of donations. Do I have a motion?
So moved.
Do I have a second?
Second.
Any further discussion?
Just to draw your attention to a personnel item, we are approving AG 1531. We don't normally board approve AGs, and we normally do policy, but this one is tied to compensation. The reason it's on there is because we had some title changes and roles, and so we wanted to make sure that was reflective. And you'll also see a column there on transition days. We wanted a more systematic approach of how many transition days when we're between staff. We just wanted to solidify that, so you will see a column added for that as well.
Great. Any further questions or discussion? Hearing none, Mr. Zink, please call the roll.
Mr. D?
Yes.
Ms. French?
Yes.
Ms. Casper?
Yes.
Mr. Horton?
Yes.
Ms. Schaefer?
Yes. All right, we'll move to closing comments. Let's start with Mrs. French today.
Oh, gosh. Well, congratulations on a fabulous start to the school year, to all of our teachers, all of our students, all of our parents for understanding all the transportation information and school fees and all the things and getting kids out the door. I unfortunately wasn't able to attend opening day with staff because I was at my own opening day. However, I heard it was very positive, very encouraging, and a great start to the year. So congratulations to our entire district on kicking off another wonderful school year.
Great. Mr. Horton?
I'm next, okay. I agree. It's great that school has started, and I think for a lot of people, it's shaking off the summer like doldrums, and you're back in the buildings. I know for me, it feels like I was in the buildings all summer with all the sports camps my kids were going to, but but it is neat to be back in the buildings, and I just want to encourage everybody to take advantage of that, and specifically get involved with your PTSOs or PTAs. Those organizations do so much around the experience that families will experience in our schools, and they need bodies and volunteers capable of helping them do that work. So this is my call out to encourage everybody to volunteer in schools. I've now probably, Lily graduated, so I've gone through a whole generation of it, and it's been the most rewarding thing that I've been part of in raising them, is being involved with the school communities through that volunteer work. So encourage everybody to reach out to their PTSOs, PTAs. They will find you. They will give you good, meaningful work, hard work that is good work, and please take advantage of that and help our communities. Thanks.
Mr. Adi?
Yeah, it's exciting that school has started, and I can see the pictures of the kids. They're excited to start school, and I want to really say that it was a good start. Dr. Riley, Ashley, I would say that this convocation was the best I have ever attended. I've never seen convocation this good, because you brought in a motivational speaker to start the whole district ready, the teachers, the staff, and everybody ready to go. So I believe that the way we started, we're going to end well. So thank you so much for that. I really, really enjoyed it. And that's all I have to say.
Great. Mrs. Gasper?
Yes, echo everybody's sentiment about being back to school. It's pretty exciting. Convocation was amazing. It was a great day and a great kickoff. And the first fanfare was today at Indy, so I got to go to the first fanfare, which is always fun for me because my kids went there. And then Mr. Schaefer and I probably popped into 6 or 8 other buildings today just to say hi, and everybody seemed to be loving life so far. They seem to be having a good time. The teachers seem excited. The kids that we saw seemed excited. And of course, it wouldn't be me if I didn't say the floors were so shiny. Love the shiny floors. So thank you to our maintenance staff for getting the buildings ready.
Mr. Zink?
Okay, well, this is like the sign of slower times ahead for us. So I am really glad that everybody's back and off to a great start. I've mentioned it several times, and I will say it again, that the first day for new staff, I thought was a really, really, really well put together event, and it was a little sad for me because I felt like the new staff looked young, which is a sign that obviously
really
I'm
did.
getting old.
I think it's just us.
But yeah, it was a really nice event. It was held in the auditorium, which was nice, and it felt like a fun and exciting moment. So
Yeah.
congrats to everybody for new positions and coming back for the year.
On Thursday, when I was visiting buildings, I encountered a kindergartner, and I said, "How is your day going?" And he said, "I don't know. It's too soon to tell." So I'm excited about, I wrote the building down so I wouldn't forget to go visit that young man and to hear how his day has been. But our students were just all smiles, even our high school students who are getting up early in the morning. But I think it's going to be a really wonderful year as we continue to build our future, literally and figuratively.
I appreciate the communications department's quick work on putting together a first day of school video so everyone could see the excitement of all the kids across the board at all levels. Also having an opportunity to not only visit schools today, but visit schools before school opened. I was astonished one day how full the parking lot was before the non-administrative staff had officially returned to the buildings, and the parking lot was just full. I saw moms there helping children who were teachers. I saw spouses helping each other move things in, painting walls, doing all those extra touches that make it such a special environment for our students. And I'm so thankful for all that work that went on, not only for those who were required to be here over the summer, but also for those who chose to be here over the summer. So thank you to everyone for all that work. And then back to the facilities piece, one piece that I had intended to mention that I didn't through that work when we had the opportunity to visit a school that had been recently built, where the students moved mid-year, not only did it touch on all the benefits that we have spoken about and that they extolled up there, but they also said, same group of students, because it was a January move, they said that their incidence of behavior reports and poor behavior had gone down significantly, which again, I don't think we all appreciate that on how a new build can impact that aspect. But they said just the way they organized the flow of students, the way they had the common spaces, the way they built the corridors, actually was intentional, that it had a significant impact on the number of disciplinary referrals. So just something else to keep in mind that I thought was really interesting. And with that, I'd like to ask for a motion to enter into executive session to consider the appointment, employment, dismissal, discipline, promotion, demotion, or compensation of a public employee or official per Ohio Revised Code 121.22, or to consider the investigation of charges or complaints against a public employee per Ohio Revised Code 121.22. Do I have a motion?
So moved. Second.
All right. Any discussion? Someday I'm just going to have this memorized and just say it myself. We will not be taking action when we come out of executive session, but Adam, will you please call the roll?
Mr. D?
Yes.
Ms. French?
Yes.
Ms. Casper?
Yes.
Mr. Horton?
Yes.
Ms. Schaefer?
Yes, and I should amend that. We will, other than adjourning the meeting, we will not be taking action when we come out of executive session. Thank you.
then you get billed.
It's a thing. It's a whole thing. Not worth it.
We did season tickets one year, and it was like, then we felt bad doing this, and it was,
Yeah.
hey, here it is. That's back when they weren't winning.
Are we ready?
One sec.
Make sure everybody's mics are back on, please. All right, do I have a motion to adjourn this meeting?
So moved.
Second?
Second.
Any discussion? Hearing none. Adam, please call the roll.
Mr. D.
Yes.
Ms. Casper.
Yes.
Ms. French.
Yes.
Mr. Horton.
Yes.
Ms. Schaefer.
Yes. Thank you, everyone.
All right, and